Hey everybody, it's low carb and keto nutrition specialist Amy Berger, and I help people do keto without the crazy. Today I'd like to talk to you about 6 ways to raise your ketone level. But before we get into that topic, I just want to tell you that the online course Reverse Type 2 Diabetes from Adapt Your Life Academy will be open for enrollment from February 10th through February 17th, 2025, February 10th through February 17th. The course itself is entirely self-paced. You can go through all the video lessons and read all the materials as quickly or as slowly as you like, but you can only actually get into the course between February 10th and the 17th. It is taught by none other than highly esteemed keto authority, Dr. Eric Westman, and I am part of the course as well. I help to contribute a lot of the content, and there are live sessions with Dr. Westman and some with yours truly. And I can guarantee you, if you have type 2 diabetes or prediabetes, and you would like to not have type 2 diabetes or prediabetes anymore, if you would like to reverse those, as is in the title of the course, Reverse Type 2 Diabetes, there's really no one, frankly, in the world better to learn from than Dr. Westman. So check out that course. I will put a link to it in the notes. Okay, 6 ways to raise your ketone level, and Amy's got the notes. You know it's going to be good, or I don't know, maybe all askew when she brings the notes. So if we're going to talk about ways to raise your ketone level, the first question that I want you to ask yourself is, do I need higher ketone levels? A lot of people don't. I did a video recently called What Should My Ketone Level Be? Or Does Your Ketone Level Matter? I don't remember the title, but I'll put a link to it in the notes. Because it was all about that. It was all about, does it matter if you have high ketones or no ketones or a low level of ketones? And the answer as to whether it matters is really whether you are getting the results you want. If you're doing a low carb or keto or carnivore diet or some variation of carbohydrate restriction, and you are happy with how it's going, if whatever aim you have is being realized, if whatever goals you're working toward are, you're either already there or you know you're on your way there, then whatever you're doing now is working. Whatever your ketone level may be, whether you have high ketones or you don't register ketones at all, it doesn't matter because you're getting the result you want. So I want to say that right up front here. If you're content with how things are going, you feel great, everything's going well, this is a non-issue for you and you don't even have to worry about it. Now, I hope you'll keep watching just for the educational aspect. Maybe this will be helpful for you, or you can use this to help someone else who you know who's following a low-carb, keto, carnivore diet who might need help, or maybe everything's going great for you now. Maybe 6 weeks, 6 months, 2, 5 years from now, things won't be going so well, and you might reach a point where some of this knowledge will come in handy. But that really is the first question. Do you need to have higher ketones? It is an entirely individual thing, but for most people who are looking to lose weight, improve metabolic health, meaning something like reversing type 2 diabetes or prediabetes, reversing PCOS. I just did a video recently on that, keto for PCOS, improving blood pressure, reversing non-alcoholic fatty liver, all of these amazing things that we know keto is good for. Most people really don't need to have any particular level of ketones to accomplish that. Where I do think the ketone level might matter more, and I emphasize might, the research is in its infancy, but issues that might benefit from a higher ketone level, and this is my opinion as a nutritionist, it's not medical advice, I'm not a doctor, insert disclaimer here, right? Not diagnosing or treating or preventing anything, but where the higher ketone level might matter and might have an impact on how you're doing is in mental health. There are a lot of people now doing ketogenic diets for major depressive disorder like depression, bipolar, schizophrenia, anxiety, all kinds of mood and psychiatric stuff. So the ketone level may or may not play a role there. We don't know yet for sure. Or it may be really important for some people and not so much for others. But the mental health aspect is one area where it could matter. Anything neurological, neurodegenerative, or cognitive in nature. So I wrote a book about Alzheimer's disease. It's called The Alzheimer's Antidote. In fact, I think I have a copy of it handy right here, folks. The Alzheimer's Antidote. It's all about using a very low carb or ketogenic diet for cognitive impairment and cognitive decline. So I think any type of cognitive impairment or cognitive decline, any type of neurodegenerative condition like Alzheimer's disease, Parkinson's disease, multiple sclerosis, possibly ALS or Lou Gehrig's disease, traumatic brain injury, TBI, or I think it's called CTE, chronic traumatic encephalopathy or something like that. It's a big, I don't know if I know the full abbreviation. Basically, a few too many blows to the head. It happens a lot in sports, boxing, football, the chronic concussion type things. I really do think that the ketone level might play a role more there. And cancer is a whole separate animal. I hesitate to say anything about that. There may be a role for ketones there as well. But that's really, again, just the first question. Do I even need to be thinking about my ketone level at all? Does it matter? It might or it might not. So if you are using a ketogenic diet for one of those conditions where I think it might be helpful, then it might be helpful, right? The other thing I want to tell you, and then I will tell you the 6 ways to raise your ketone level, but the other thing that is really important to know that I think a lot of you don't know is that your ketone level varies throughout the day. It's not something that stays totally static all day. Like if you measure first thing in the morning, and let's say you're testing your blood ketone level, and it's, 0.6 or 1.8, whatever it is, it's not going to stay there all day long. And so if you have only ever been measuring once a day, and you're disappointed, you're thinking, I'm not in ketosis, or it's why is it so low? It might be significantly higher if you test 2 hours later or 10 or 15 hours later. Again, that number varies throughout the day. It's kind of like your blood sugar. Now, your blood sugar on a keto or low carb diet probably isn't ping-ponging between extremes of highs and lows all day, but it's not gonna, be the exact same number all day, 24/7. It will fluctuate a little bit. So will your ketone level. So if you are someone who has already been measuring ketones, but you've only ever been checking once a day, I do think it could be helpful for you to measure more than once a day. And it's up to you what you choose, blood, breath, or urine. There's a lot of controversy as to what is the most accurate, what's the most helpful. I would say blood. Some people would say breath. Urine strips still work for me. You'll hear a lot about, urine ketone test strips don't work if you've been on keto for a while. That may be true for some people, not for everybody, because they still turn pink or purple when I use them. So it's up to you. But whatever method you are using, I would test more than once a day. And because, if you don't, you're really only getting the level at that one point in time, and you don't know if it was substantially lower or higher at some other point of the day. And the blood measurement can get a little bit expensive because the test strips are still a little pricey. They have come down massively in price over the last few years, but they're still, it's a little bit costly if you're going to check, 3, 4, 5 times a day. But I think the nice thing is that this isn't something you have to do forever. You can do it for a month or so, maybe even 2 or 3 weeks. If you typically eat the same foods and have the same kind of schedule, same kind of workout or sleep regimen or whatever, then you don't have to do this forever. You don't have to check 5 times a day for a year. A few weeks should give you enough data to know what's going on. So even if it is a little costly, it's not something you have to do forever. Okay, number one way to increase your ketone level, and not number one in terms of the most important or the most effective, just number one, the first one I happen to put on my list, is cut carbs. It is possible that the only thing you need to do is eat less carbohydrate. The number one thing that makes a diet ketogenic is the lack of carbohydrate. When your carbohydrate intake is ultra, ultra low, what that does is it brings your blood sugar down to a low normal level, and it brings your insulin down to a low normal level. When insulin is especially low, that's when we generate more ketones. So if you have been, dabbling in keto, and you've been doing keto light, quote, quote, you've been eating keto brownies and keto cereal and keto cookies and keto ice cream and keto bread, your diet is probably not that ketogenic. Your carbohydrate intake, if you've been counting net carbs rather than total carbs, that might be the only change you need to make, is just eat a lot less carbohydrate. I would recommend switching. If you are counting net carbs, switch to total carbs. If you are currently eating a lot of these keto prepackaged goods, they got to go immediately. Again, maybe not forever. Do this for a month and see what happens. See if you notice a substantial change in whatever you're trying to do. So, step one, reduce carbs. The second thing that you could do possibly to raise your ketone level, and before I forget, I want to specify that I cannot tell you exactly how much your ketones will rise if you do this, if you do any of the 6 things I'm going to tell you. I can tell you that you, Marcia Smith in Peoria, Illinois, watching this video, your ketones will rise by 1.7 in the blood, or by this many parts per million in the breath, or your urine strip will be exactly this shade of pink or purple. I wish I could do that. All I can do is tell you that physiologically, biochemically, these are 6 things that should raise your ketone level. How much and how quickly, the only person who can tell you that is you. I know you wish I could tell you an exact number. I can't. Okay, so one way to do it, reduce carbs. Second way to do it, reduce protein. I know. What? There's a couple of heads exploding right now because Amy just said to reduce protein. I did a video a little while ago called, "Is Protein Ruining Your Keto Diet?" And, with the advent of the carnivore diet, and everybody's so taken with carnivore now, and all you see is piles and piles of steak, you think that protein can do no wrong. Protein is just the darling of everything. For whatever problem you have, more protein. No. Protein actually has a very slight effect on insulin. It doesn't spike it. Please, please never use the S word when you're talking about protein. Protein doesn't spike insulin the way refined carbohydrate does, but it does have a very physiologically normal impact on insulin. It rises insulin a little bit, and that little bit is just enough to reduce the synthesis of ketones. And I talk in detail about this in that video. I will link to it in the notes below. That video is Protein Ruining Your Keto Diet. For the subset of people who really do need higher ketone levels, they have to watch their protein intake in addition to watching the carbohydrate intake. If you've ever heard of a 3-to-1 keto diet or a 4-to-1 keto diet, that comes from the epilepsy world, where those kids and some adults have to really micromanage their diet so tightly to prevent seizures. And when we say a 3-to-1 or a 4-to-1 diet, it is a ratio of 3 or 4 parts fat, a 3-to-1 or 4-to-1, 3 or 4 parts fat to 1 part carbohydrate and protein combined. And it's specifically because too much protein will limit the production of ketones. We have to eat protein. Everybody hear me. Protein is essential. It's delicious. It brings with it tons of vitamins and minerals and other like micronutrients that we need. We love protein. But if we are specifically trying to see what would happen if we have higher ketones, to see if the brain fog goes away, if our mood is much, much better, if we have much more energy, if whatever you are trying to accomplish, if that happens better when your ketone levels are higher, one potential way to get those ketones higher is to cut back on the amount of protein you're eating. Now, you could cut back wholesale, just lower your protein intake, but you could also shift, well, this is going to reduce your absolute protein intake too, shift to higher fat meats. Think of like loose sausage or ground pork, ground beef with a higher fat percentage, a fatty steak and eat the fat, a fatty pork chop, eat the fat, fatty fish, eat the skin, eat the fat on the fish. So you're basically just looking at protein sources that are much higher in fat, bacon, pork belly, that type of thing. Or, if you keep kosher, if you eat halal, some equivalent of that, just fatty meat. Okay. This is, again, for anyone of you who's watching this, who's doing a carnivore diet or a higher protein diet, and you're stumped, you're stymied, you're like, I'm basically on a 0 carb diet. Why are my ketones so low? I'm eating no carbs. Why don't I have any ketones? It's because of that amount of protein. And if you would just shift that ratio a bit, a little bit more fat and less protein, you would likely see your ketone level rise. Okay. Third way to potentially raise your ketone level is to fast. Because if carbohydrate reduces the ketone level and protein reduces the ketone level, well then if you eat nothing, your ketone level will probably rise. And some of you likely have experienced this in your own bodies. You know that this is how it works. Now for some people though, it takes a while. You might not see a high ketone level until like 3 or 4 days into a fast. And I do not recommend multi-day fasting, unless if you are doing it under medical supervision for a very specific purpose, that may be different. But I don't recommend that any of you out there like stop eating for a week just for fun, just to see what happens. Please do not do that, particularly if you take medications of any kind. I would normally say for diabetes or high blood pressure or mood stabilizers, antipsychotic drugs. I don't care what drug you're on. I don't want you fasting for multiple days without medical supervision. But obviously, fasting could raise your ketone level. Or if you want to basically eat nothing but fat, do a fat fast. I think I did a video on that a long time ago. I'll link to that in the notes if I did a video on it. Basically eating almost nothing but fat. You're going to have, macadamia nuts, pork belly, cream cheese, maybe, do you know what coconut butter is, or like coconut manna, a nice generous spoonful of that delicious coconut butter, things that are almost 100% fat, so that way you're eating, but you're eating basically 0 carbohydrate and almost 0 protein, so that insulin is staying super, super low even though you're eating. And so theoretically that would help to raise the ketones. Way number 4 to get higher ketones, you could use coconut oil or MCT oil. MCT stands for medium chain triglyceride, and that is a special kind of fatty acid that your body more readily converts into ketones even when you're not on a ketogenic diet. That is sort of the magic of MCT oil, that you could be eating a high carb, regular, standard type diet, and if you were to use MCT oil in some way, you would probably have measurable ketones, whether, again, your blood, breath, or urine. And the way, and coconut oil does the same thing, because coconut oil is a source of these medium chain fats. Now, straight purified MCT oil that you can get just about anywhere now. I mean, even some regular supermarkets carry it, but you can get it online, you can get it from health food stores. That is isolated, concentrated medium chain fatty acids. So you're getting only those medium chain fats. Whereas if you use coconut oil, you're getting a little bit of those MCTs, but a lot of other fats too. The other fats that coconut oil contains have some interesting properties for health unrelated to the ketogenic effect, but coconut oil is just a little more economical. Coconut oil is much more affordable, although the price of MCT oil has come down a lot. And you know how to use it any way you like. MCT oil, a lot of people put it in their coffee in the morning and, use a little frother, blend it up a little. You could drizzle it on anything. You could even, if you ever make a homemade vinaigrette, a homemade salad dressing, use a little bit of MCT oil as one of the fats. And just a word of caution, if you kind of have to get your body accustomed to MCT oil. You have to get used to having that much of it. You just start small and increase it gradually over time, because it does have some GI effects if you overdo MCT oil and your body's not accustomed to it yet. Be prepared to have a nice clean out. You better know where the nearest bathroom is, and I would even suggest don't wear your favorite pair of pants that day, if you know what I mean. We lovingly call that in the keto world disaster pants, because some of us have been through it. We learned the hard way. So yeah, coconut oil or MCT oil will raise your ketones. And another way number five of 6 to raise your ketone level, use exogenous ketones. Exogenous means from the outside, meaning these are ketones that you take as a supplement rather than your body producing them. Like, and endogenous means from the inside. That's when you're on a ketogenic diet or fasting and your body is producing ketones. These exogenous ketones come in the form, most commonly, of a powder that you mix in water and you drink. And it tends to be very, very salty because I guess just the biochemistry of how this stuff needs to be stabilized and needs to be produced. It is bonded, the beta hydroxybutyrate, the ketone, is bonded to sodium and sometimes I think calcium and magnesium, but mostly sodium, which is why it tastes salty. So in fact, they're called ketone salts, exogenous ketone salts. There are also ketone esters, which is a slightly different kind of molecule, but it comes in a liquid form that you drink, and it's not easy to drink, but the ester is much, much more concentrated. So it's going to give you like a bigger hit of ketones. Both of these, the exogenous ketone salts and the exogenous ketone esters, are fairly expensive, but if you are desperate to see what would happen if you had higher ketones, it might be worth you experimenting. It would be worth you spending the extra money. Because again, like I said earlier, it's an experiment. Do it for 2-3 weeks, see what happens. If you don't notice any difference, well, okay, then you don't need to spend that money anymore. If you do notice a difference, especially a really substantial one, then you have the opportunity to ask yourself, is it worth it for me to keep buying this? Is the improvement, is the difference I'm experiencing so substantial that it's worth me finding the money to keep buying this product for myself for some period of time? And I do have some companies that I trust with regard to these items. I have not experimented with them much myself, but these two particular companies I will link in the notes. I have one company that I would recommend for the exogenous ketone salts, and that is Audacious Nutrition. And there's Ketone Aid for the ketone ester product. And I know the people behind these companies. I know like literally who founded the company, who made the product. And if I was ever going to be using these products and wanted to experiment with them for myself, this is who I would buy from. And I do have an affiliate link to the Audacious Nutrition, not to the Ketone Aid. Okay. The other way, and this might surprise you, the 6th way to possibly raise your ketone level is to increase your intake of polyunsaturated fatty acids, those PUFAs. What? First, Amy said to cut back on protein. Now she's telling us to eat PUFAs, polyunsaturated fatty acid. Meanwhile, every other ketone influencer out there, except maybe Nick Norwitz, is telling us PUFAs are poison, they're terrible, soybean oil will kill you, walnuts are poison. I will be completely honest with you, dear viewers, dear fans, followers. I don't fully understand the biochemistry of it, but supposedly polyunsaturated fatty acids, these fat molecules that have more than one double bond in them, are more ketogenic. They are more prone to generating ketones or to facilitating your body making ketones compared to a fat that is more saturated, like butter, like beef fat, or I would say coconut oil, but that's the exception because of the MCTs. So something like flaxseed oil is highly polyunsaturated. I think it has the predominant fat in it has like 5 double bonds, or no, sorry, I'm thinking of fish oil. That's EPA. Flax oil, I think maybe has 3 double bonds. It's been a while since I looked at the molecule of alpha-linolenic acid. It's been a while. The point is, these polyunsaturated fatty acids tend to be more ketogenic, and if I recall correctly, it has something to do with the double bond. So if a particular fat or oil that you're using has multiple double bonds, like fish oil does, like flaxseed oil does, like sesame oil does, then it could potentially raise your ketone level compared to some other type of fat or oil. And if you are afraid of using these things, again, it's not going to hurt you in the short term. If you want to do a little experiment for a few weeks to see, hey, I started, adding some flax oil to my homemade vinaigrette, or maybe you eat full-fat Greek yogurt or something. You could absolutely stir some cold-pressed flax oil into that. Flax oil, if you like that nutty sort of hazelnutty type flavor, that's what it tastes like. I find it yummy. It maybe took some getting used to, but anyway, there's ways to use this stuff. There's ways to introduce it into your diet. You could even just put some on a spoon and take it down and be done with it. But even if you are concerned that these polyunsaturated fatty acids might have some detrimental effect for you, for your long-term health, in the short term, it would be worth doing that experiment to see, A, does this raise my ketone level? And B, if it does raise my ketone level, does that higher ketone level help me in any way to get closer to the goal I'm trying to get to in doing a ketogenic diet? Because that is really the question, right? Does this intervention raise my ketones? And I think all of these should. What were they? 6 things: cutting carbs, reducing protein, fasting, reducing all food across the board, using MCT oil or coconut oil, using exogenous ketones, or increasing intake or swapping out some fats for these polyunsaturated fatty acids. Does that make me have higher ketones? And then do those higher ketones help me in some way that I was looking to be helped? Because then if no, then okay, done, experiment over. I can save my money for yummy steaks and eggs and cheese and who knows what. If it is helping a lot, then, like I said, now you get to decide, do I want to keep doing this? Is it worth the extra expense, the extra effort, whatever you may be doing? The answer could very well be yes, it's absolutely worth it. And I want to close out by saying that with regard to the exogenous ketones, the ketone esters, the ketone salts, and possibly even the MCT oil and coconut oil, the higher ketone level that results from that might or might not have the same effect as compared to the ketones that your own body produces either during a fast or on a truly ketogenic diet where your carbohydrate intake and possibly your protein intake is reduced. Because the ketones themselves may be doing something. In fact, they are. We know that from the research on these exogenous ketone molecules. But there may be some effects that you're looking to get that are actually maybe not a result of the ketones, but of the metabolic processes going on in your body that result in those ketones. And so just taking the exogenous ketone from the outside does not automatically replicate or replace all of those biological, like biochemical processes that would otherwise make the ketones. Does that make sense? Like taking the it's like taking, if you have type 2 diabetes and you inject insulin and it lowers your blood sugar, that is not the same as your blood sugar lowering naturally for some other reason, you know, or like taking a walk and your blood sugar is lower. It's the end result is that you have lower blood sugar. The way it happened was very different. So like with these exogenous ketones versus fasting versus an ultra low carb diet, your ketone level is going to be higher. The way that occurred was different. And it's the way that it occurred that might have a bigger impact on your health or whatever, you know, aim you're trying to achieve versus just the presence of the ketones themselves. But the presence of the ketones themselves can be helpful sometimes. And we know this really from some of the Alzheimer's research and the research on ketones for these other neurodegenerative conditions and traumatic brain injury and all that stuff. So I hope that makes sense. So I know you wish this was easy. I wish it was easy. I wish I could give you an exact algorithm to like, oh, take this much and this much will happen. You have to experiment with it yourself. And, you know, please do so safely. If you're looking for a nutritionist who could help you depending on your situation, I'm available for private consultations. There's a link in the notes of every video. I'm a real person. You can actually get on a call with me. I'm not just on YouTube. Like I'm real. We can do a consultation. And so let's see. We can do that. Remember, the reverse type 2 diabetes course from Adapt Your Life is open for enrollment. Like I said, February 10th through the 17th. If you're listening to this after that, get on the wait list for the next round. Go to that website anyway that I'll link to in the notes and put yourself on the wait list for the next round. That, first of all, guarantees you a spot in the next round, and you will be on the list so that we can notify you as soon as we set a date for the next round. And I also, coming up from Adapt Your Life, and remember, I am part of that type 2 diabetes course, but even before then, we have a course all about protein that will be open January 27th through the 29th. It's a very short open window, but that course is self-paced. So just like the diabetes course, you can only enroll between January 27th and 29th, but once you enroll, you can take all the time you want to watch all those video lessons about protein, and we have written materials that you can download and read. So lots of good stuff coming up. I hope that is helpful. I get lots of questions about this. And so if you want to see higher ketones, I hope you got some ideas, 6 to be specific, about how to do it. But most of all, that first question that I opened this video with, do you need to do it? Is this something you even need to think about? You know, yes, it might be. No, it might not be. But I do hope that's helpful. As always, please subscribe to this channel if you're not already. If you need some more keto without the crazy in your life, check out the rest of my videos. I've been doing this for years. We have a merch store. If you want to represent, if you want to share the keto without the crazy love, we've got mugs, tote bags, sweatshirts, t-shirts, all that good stuff. Until next time, 2 favors to ask. Number 1, like I said, please subscribe if you're not already, and share these videos. If you're in various keto groups and keto social media forums and you think this would be helpful for somebody, please share it. And second, you know what I need you to do. Until next time, keep the crazy out of your keto. Thanks for watching.